Even with the excitement being generated by the Tobago's first official carnival in October, we also have exciting news as we head back home for the 10th sitting of Tobago House of Assembly. That's right, we are back in a fully refurbished chamber, remodeled and ready to accommodate all of our members and, of course, you, our visitors. On Thursday, October 27th, debates continue as Minority Leader Kelvon Morris will lay a motion appealing to the House to have immediate and appropriate action taken towards the urgent appointment of a Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors. Thursday, October 27th from 1:30 p.m. Tune in or come in to see your revamped Tobago House of Assembly chamber and stay for the action. Enjoy the festivities, be safe, but whatever you do, don't miss it.
Please note the following safety rules. Should there be any reason for you to evacuate the chamber, use either of the two exit doors. People who use the door
Let us now pray. O Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of all our citizens in this our land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Members, you may be seated.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer.
Members' request for leave has been given to the Assembly Legislative Secretariat for member for Palliative Care Landswim Speyside. Members' leave has been granted. Also, I want to warmly welcome you all back to the chambers. I hope you enjoy your stay here. I also want to say thank you to my hardworking staff. Without them, this would not be possible. So again, thank you to the Assembly Legislative staff. I also want for us members to welcome Mason Hall Secondary. They are joining us today. I hope that you would learn from this experience as much as possible. And members, please, let's be on our best behavior today, right?
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, we the members of the majority are prepared to answer 3 of the 4 questions asked by the...
Leader of Assembly Business, papers to be laid. Do you have
No,
any?
no, Madam Presiding Officer.
Okay.
Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees, questions to secretaries.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you again, Madam Presiding Officer.
Most welcome.
Madam Presiding Officer, we the members of the majority are prepared to answer 3 or 4 questions. Questions 22, questions 23, question 24, and question 25. The absence of the Chief Secretary from today's sitting would mean that we would want question 26 to be deferred.
Do you have any paper questions, response to written answers to be laid today?
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer, and all such questions were submitted to the clerk.
Members, the responses that were due today are on your desk. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 23 is yours. Question
Minority Councillor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 23 to the Secretary in the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. Assemblyman Trevor James.
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, just bear with me, let me ensure that I'm answering the correct question. in relation to the written responses given regarding the composition and remuneration of the Spell Board, can the Secretary indicate the guiding authority that informed the remuneration package of the executive directors and the independent directors? Madam Presiding Officer, the guiding authority that informed the remuneration package of the executive directors and independent directors. 1, the guiding principle and philosophy as follows. What we are attempting to do was balancing Tobago nationalism in the encouragement of Tobagonians to be willing to give public service with industry best practice and standards, and the need to demonstrate that Tobago can attract and retain its best talent. The guiding authority for the actual fees approved. A, salaries approved by the public sector, and these are from where we took the guidance and the authority. Salaries approved by the Public Sector Negotiation Committee, the PSNC, for state enterprises for the period 2006 to 2009. B, the 98th report of the Salaries Reviews Commission of 2013. And C, the Ministry of Finance notice of review of fees and allowances payable to state enterprises and statutory bodies of 2008. The executive chairman, according to the PNC, approval for executive chairman of one premium state enterprises UDICOT, for example, for the period 2006 to 2009. And I'm quoting this example so that there's context to what we have done. The monthly salary to the executive chairman of UDICOT, $85,000 to $90,000 per month. Motor vehicle not exceeding $425,000. Housing allowance of $6,000. Landline allowance of $500. Cell phone allowance monthly of $500. Group life health plan and coverage of up to 2 times annual basic salary, and 20% gratuity. Madam Presiding Officer, Spell was not, and I suppose is not capable of paying even half of what the PSNC approved in 2009, and therefore the executive chairman of Spell was asked to accept way less. But the Secretary of Infrastructure is confident that in the time to come, and the performance and profitability of Spell will meet and surpass that capability. Executive directors of state enterprises, agencies, and statutory bodies is approved by the 98th Salary Review Commission report of 2013, stated that the basic salary range is between $26,980 and $31,950. Although the foregoing is the basic salary, Spell again was not capable of paying, so the Executive Council was advised to cap off at $10,000 and balance it with the level of involvement determined the Executive Council and to be reviewed as time goes on. As far as deputy chairman and lead independent directors and independent directors go, we took guidance from the Ministry of Finance notice of review and fees and allowances payable to state enterprises and statutory bodies of 2008. And we also considered the dual role of deputy chair and lead independent director, and independent directors' dual responsibility for advisory and governance functions. All of these were considered in determining the salaries for the Spell Board. I thank you.
Minority Councillor.
Follow up, Madam Chairman. Madam Presiding Officer, sorry. So in relation to the directors on the board of Spell, can the member indicate if any of the directors are full-time versus who are part-time?
Assemblyman James.
The intent, which we have not yet gotten full approval for, is to have both the executive chair and deputy chair as full-time staff members.
Madam Presiding Officer, follow up. The member would have indicated that the the independent directors, their fees were basically matched by the state enterprise performance monitoring manual, revised fees and allowances. Based on the revised fees and allowances, Madam Presiding Officer, we have where the boards are categorized by groups A, B, and C. Can the member indicate which category they use to determine the fees for the independent directors?
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, let me restate the guiding authority for the actual fees that was used. A, the PSNC for state enterprises for the period 2006 to 2009, the 98th report of the Salaries Review Commission of 2013, and the Ministry of Finance Review of Fees and Allowances 2008.
Madam Presiding Officer, follow-up. I am not sure if we are looking at the same document, but Madam Presiding Officer, I have here notice revision of fees and allowances payable to state enterprises and statutory bodies. And the categories are A, B, and C. And let's take, for instance, we have an A board for the spell. The chairman is $10,000 remuneration and a traveling of $1,000. The deputy chair is $7,500 and $750 traveling, and a member is $5,500. And based on the written response from the member previously, we would like to find out, the minority would like to find out, why is it that there is a difference in fees in particular for the independent director than those that are quoted in the said revision of fees and allowances payable to state enterprises and statutory bodies?
Assemblyman James.
I will repeat again. Deputy Chair, Lead Independent Director, we considered also the dual role that was to be considered, and the responsibility. Let me just say that the Tobago House of Assembly and the Executive Council has the authority to vary these fees.
Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam
Do
Presiding
you
Officer.
think that these questions could be best asked via written answer?
Madam Presiding Officer,
Minority Leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, based on the responses of the member, hence the follow-up questions.
Last one. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, the member has still not answered the question. And based on his written responses, it says that independent directors are the guardians of the interests of the SPEL stakeholders, its credibility and governance. They bring their objective and independent judgment to the deliberations of the board to ensure optimum performance while adhering to proper principles of governance and compliance. It also says the executive directors have management responsibility of assisting and supporting, as well the executive chairman in ensuring that the strategic policy direction prescribed by the board is translated and executed throughout all levels of the company, from top management level through routine day-to-day operations. So, Madam Presiding Officer, it is clear from the written response that the independent directors have a different role to those of the executive directors. And the member indicated that one of the guiding policies that he used to determine the remuneration is that of the revision of fees.
Can I have the question, please?
The question? Which question, Madam Presiding Officer?
You asked, this is question and answer, so can I have the question? Are you posing a question to the Assemblyman?
Yes, I'm posing
Okay.
a question.
because I'm sure the Assemblyman knows what he wrote. Can the question be posed, please? Minority Leader? There's no need for that. There's absolutely no need for that.
So,
Can I have the question, Minority Councillor?
Madam Presiding Officer, the question to the member still remains. Why are the fees remunerated to the independent directors different from those prescribed? And further, Madam Presiding Officer, the member in a follow-up indicated that the Executive Council can waive fees. Yes, the Executive Council can waive fees, but what is the authority? Was there an executive note written to so change the fees as those that were given? Madam Presiding Officer, we are yet to answer, the member is yet to answer the question, what is the guiding principle and why is it different from what he has said it is?
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, at the next sitting, I will supply the member with the Executive Council note that gave authority.
Okay. Minority Councillor, you're good with that? Okay, nice. Moving on. Minority Leader.
Question number 24 to the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development.
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, the question reads, as it relates to roadworks and infrastructure projects, the Chief Secretary made mention of at the recent press conference, namely Friendship, Bon Accord, Dodge Fort, Argyle, Shervan Road, Storby Local Road, Gaskin Bay Road, Connector Road, Lamy Road, Argyle, and the Connector Road to Scarborough RC. Can the Secretary indicate the following? Which contractors were selected for these projects? What was the amount awarded for each project by the THA? Madam Presiding Officer, the preamble to the questions the Minority Leader alluded to and is ascribing comments made by the Chief Secretary. It is not for me to speak on the veracity of these comments. However, it forms the basis for the questions posed. My good friend on the other side went on to name 10 places. It is unfortunate that the question is written is vague, and out of an abundance of caution, and so as to not mislead the House, I am compelled not to speculate on what the projects or project cost is being asked.
Minority Leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, I'm quite happy that this Secretary would have chosen to go down the road of dodging and behind technicalities. And so I come here prepared with specific roads and specific contractors for him to answer today. And I hope he came prepared as well. So, with respect to the road, and as the letter of award would have indicated, Mount Mary to Dutch Fort. We want to know, as the question asks, which contractor was selected for that project? What was the amount awarded for that project? As it relates to the Shervan to Friendship project, we want to know which contractor was selected for that project and what was the amount for that project. As it relates to the Canaan to Pigeon Point, we want to know which contractor was selected for that project and what was the amount for that project. And as it relates to the works at Lamy, because I saw it myself, to Argyle, we want to know who was the contractor and what was the amount.
Assemblyman James.
Madam Presiding Officer, I think that there is a severe lack of understanding of what selected means, what award means in the procurement process. Contracts, to be specific, the division selected no one contractor for none of those projects. We have awarded contracts, but we didn't select a contractor. Just to be clear, so the member doesn't go down the wrong road. The division went through a process of selective tendering. Out of that selective tendering, selected contractors responded, and the division, based on an assessment of the responses, awarded contracts to the successful tenderer. So maybe the member wants to restate his question.
Madam Presiding Officer, since we are going along the road of technicalities, I would like to replace the word selected with awarded, and I hope that will allow you to answer the question as posed.
Minority Leader, sorry, excuse me, go again.
I withdrew the word selected, and I'm now asking for the contractors that were awarded. As the roads mentioned, Shervan to Friendship, Dutch Fort to Mount Mary, Canaan to Pigeon Point, and Lamy Road, Argyle.
Assemblyman James.
The contractors that were awarded, Argyle to Roxborough, Bloody Bay Road. Name of the contractor, Construction Services and Supplies Limited. Value of the contract, $25,872,595.88. For the project from Dutch Fort to Scarborough RC, it was awarded to California Stockholm Limited for a sum of $19,480,000, $19,480,000, $0.61. Let me read it again. $19,481,061.06. For the contract from Milford Road to Pigeon Point and connecting through Milford Court and Bonaccord Development, contract was awarded to Innovative Roofing and Construction Solutions Limited for a sum of $781,820.
Minority Leader.
My understanding is that there is a Shervan to Friendship that is on the table. Has that been awarded?
Assemblyman James.
Madam President, I don't know if I am answering questions based on what is written. Question was asked about roads that have been awarded. I've answered based on roads that have been awarded.
Can the Secretary indicate whether any letter of award has been awarded, is to be awarded, to a company by the name of T.N. Ramnath?
Madam Presiding Officer, this is a new question.
This, I was just about to ask, is this in keeping? Is this in keeping with the roadworks? Which roadworks in particular? So that the
question was very
Assemblyman
general
would be
as
very
it relates to roadworks and infrastructure. So we are talking about roadworks and
But
infrastructure.
you also listed very
And I listed
detailed.
about 10. He admitted that I listed about 10. So it falls within one of those 10.
Can you please state which one of the 10?
I don't have the information. I'm asking the questions.
I guess it's an open-ended question. Assemblyman James, are you so inclined to answer?
I will repeat my answer, Madam Presiding Officer. The question is, which contractors were awarded for these projects? And I've answered that question. I have no information on what the presiding officer is asking, on what the minority leader is asking.
So I'm asking whether TN Ramnat is one of those contractors that would have been, that has a letter of award or is to be awarded a contract at this time. Out of all these roads I mentioned, the one at Shirvan to Friendship and the others, is TN Ramnat part of the list of awarded contractors or selected contractors? Because I don't realize it will like the word selected.
Words have meanings. Madam
Assemblyman
Presiding
James.
Officer, I will answer one question. If the member would list all the contractors he's interested in, from TN to Warners to Kai to whomever he wants to ask about,
Not getting anything, so.
let him ask me one question and I can give him one answer.
So I'm specifically asking about TN Ramnat at this time.
Madam Presiding Officer, I answered that question.
This is not a debate. This is
Respectfully. Respectfully, Madam Presiding Officer.
members, honorable members, honorable members. Assemblyman James, can this answer be provided via written answer to the minority? Is the information readily available? Minority, I'm here, I'm speaking on your behalf.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam President.
Can the question be forwarded to the minority leader?
The response?
Sorry, the response?
I can give the response now. The response is no. I can write it as well. I would,
Okay.
seeing that you're asking for me to write the answer, I would use 2 pages to write it for the minority. Because I'm explaining that there is no contract that was issued.
I believe that's what he's trying to say,
Okay.
minority
Therefore,
leader. There is no
he's
contract.
Continue to ask the question over and over.
Okay, we appreciate that. And as I wind up on this issue, I just want the Honorable Secretary just to explain to the Honorable House, in terms you mentioned, and the word that jumped out at me is roofing. This roofing company, and we know that the Pigeon Point area is a very eco-sensitive area. On what basis the technical evaluation would have brought out a roofing company to go into our most eco-sensitive area in Tobago? What was the justification?
That sounds like a whole new question.
What was the justification?
Madam
Madam
Presiding Officer.
Experienced contractor.
I am being badgered by this gentleman. He has asked 2 questions and it's mushroomed into 5. Maybe he needs a lesson in how to write his questions.
No,
But-
here is where we ask the questions.
Members.
It's in the standing orders. I'm allowed follow.
Minority leader. Assemblyman James, can you answer that question? Can you provide us with an answer for that question?
I will consider the answer once this question is repeated.
I'm simply saying, based on the fact that my investigations would have shown this company is a roofing company, only 2 years established, and this work is to be done in the most eco-sensitive area. We would have run sandals out of town because we said this area was very eco-sensitive and we don't want people to go in and destroy the fabric.
This is pertaining to which roadworks? Which one of the roadworks listed here?
At Pigeon Point. So I'm saying, on what basis, what is the justification, what is the rationale for taking an inexperienced company and putting them to do works in our most eco-sensitive environment?
Minority leader, I don't think that's a reasonable question to ask at this point in time. I would allow you, however, to bring that question back to the House at the next sitting. Can we move on? Next question, Minority Leader.
Thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am, I like this question. Question number 25 to the Secretary in the Division of Education, Research and Technology.
Assemblyman Hackett.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question. As it relates to the school repairs program, can the Secretary indicate the following? A, the overall cost to date of the program, and B, the status of the program. Overall cost to date of the program, $41,188,799.19. Status of the program, Phase 1, 78% complete. Phase 2, 87% complete. And emergency repair works, 95% complete. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Minority Leader.
Given that the Secretary previously announced that she got Executive Council approval to spend something around the sum of $21 million, can the Secretary confirm whether she would have received additional Executive Council approval to spend these additional sums?
Madam Presiding
Hackett.
Officer, there is a difference between the school repair program 2022, which was broken into Phase 1 and Phase 2, and that is the program that was given the approval for 21 plus million. This emergency repair works, which I got Executive Council approval for, that of course, I don't know where the $21 million is coming from. I don't know where that figure is coming from, sir.
The question was pellucidly clear. It speaks to the school repairs program, and in your mandate Monday, you would have indicated to the public that you would have received approval to spend $21 million on the school repairs program. And you are now telling us that this very same school repairs program is now costing the taxpayers $41 million. So I'm simply asking, did you get Executive Council approval to spend these additional sums?
Madam Presiding Officer, Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the school repair program was approved for the $21 million. Executive Council gave approval for the emergency repair works to be completed. Total cost of the program, $41,188,799. The emergency repair works, that cost emergency repair works, $20,897,952.11. Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1. $16,821,871.76, and Phase 2, $6,160,913.33. Total cost of program to date, $41,188,799.19. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Minority Leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, I've gotten a breakdown of the emergency program, but what I want to find out, what is the cost of the school repair program that you got the approval of $21 million for? Can you please break that down?
I think that she just said it.
Again, the school repair program, you're categorizing the entire thing that happened from June to September school repair. And I'm telling you, it was broken down into two parts. What we would call Phase 1 and Phase 2, and what we will call emergency repair works. The total cost of all repairs done to schools is $41,188,799.19. Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 and Phase 2, again breaking it down, Phase 1. What is it? $16,821,871.76. And Phase 2, $6,160,913.33. So we have two executive council notes. One that approves the school repair program in phase 1 and phase 2, which is what I just quoted for you, and emergency repair works, which I got the approval for, and I would have expressed previously why we had to go to the emergency repair works, and the total, because that is the question you asked, Minority Leader, $41,188,799.19. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
I would move on, but I recognize you went over your 21 million in the school repairs program. With respect to Scarborough Sec, because I guess Scarborough Sec would fall under those 78% of works, the 22% of works not yet completed. What is the situation with Scarborough Sec? What is going on with our children at Scarborough Sec?
Assemblyman Hackett.
Madam Presiding Officer, I have the questions to Secretary here. I have two sets of questions to respond to today. Question for written answer, question for oral answer. Question for written answer states, question to the Secretary. As it relates to the school repairs program, can the Secretary provide the following? A list of the names of the contractors sole selected, and B, the project cost for contractors who were sole selected. Those responses were submitted to the clerk, and the second group of questions, questions to oral answer, I just responded to. Minority Leader, you are so inclined to, at a later sitting, ask this question about Scarborough Secondary School.
Maybe if the Secretary takes her emotion away, she should recognize I simply asked on the status of the program where she said there were 78%, some work still continuing. And I know for a fact that Scarborough Sec remains part of those works that are incomplete. So I'm asking you, seeing that we have children who
I think what he's trying to say is that he wants an update on the repairs.
What is really going on down in Scarborough Sec? I see water leaking all over
Oh,
the place.
Madam Presiding Officer, am I
Assemblyman
allowed to
Hackett?
answer a question that is not directly stated on the order paper?
It's a supplemental question, supplementary
Minority
question.
Leader, Scarborough Secondary School currently has issues, 21 years worth of neglect. And what we were able to do, and leading the charge, a former teacher of Scarborough Secondary School, were able to do is to not put a plaster on a sore that has been reeking and oozing, as I said previously, for 21 years. As secretary, because I know of the issues at the school, we were able to identify an issue that posed to be challenging. That issue is one that we, Madam Presiding Officer,
Allow her to answer the question, Minority Leader.
right. And the issue at Scarborough Secondary School, an issue that we had to treat with urgently. What is the challenge, Minority Leader? An issue that we had to treat with urgently, and that issue required that we instruct and have the PIU organize what we call a rotation system. That system has now ended because, of course, Secretary would have done what is called stakeholder consultation and would have done some collaborative meetings with members of the division and members and teachers, former colleagues of myself. Those meetings proved fruitful. There was a town hall meeting which I expected you, Minority Leader, to be a part of to get the information firsthand. At that meeting, we were able to come up with solutions, one of which is to move the sixth form of Scarborough Secondary School to that former UE open campus building at Signal Hill. That has since happened. The sixth formers are comfortably up at Signal Hill at the moment. The rotation system at Scarborough Secondary School has ceased, and we are actually working very hard on ensuring that we can repair that auditorium. As I said, that has been a case of the lack of maintenance.
Okay. Minority Leader,
Given
any other questions? Please, pose it to the Secretary for written answer. One more. I'm going to allow you one more, and we have to move on.
Given that this Secretary has presided twice over the failure to properly reopen schools, when will this Secretary hand in her resignation?
Listen, withdraw your statement, please. Excuse me?
Okay, let me put it
Clerk,
differently.
continue, please.
When will this secretary
Clerk,
start?
continue, please. Minority Leader, have a seat. Continue.
Request for leave to move the adjournment. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries. Personal explanations. Introduction of bills. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business. Motions, sorry.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas the Regional Health Authorities Act, Chapter 2905, requires that each authority be managed by a board of directors, and whereas in the case of Tobago, this is necessary for the lawful, effective, and efficient operation of the healthcare system on the island, and whereas this current Executive Council has failed for 11 months to initiate the appropriate processes to appoint a new Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors, and whereas this represents a dereliction of duty and a flagrant breach of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, be it resolved that this House agrees that the Executive Council should take immediate and appropriate actions towards the urgent appointment of a Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors. Madam Presiding Officer, it has been 11 months, 321 difficult days, and a total of 7,000, yes, I calculate the hours, 7,704 grueling hours since this PDP administration has failed to appoint a board of directors of the Tobago Regional Health Authority. And this is in breach of the Constitution and the rule of law. Sadly, while Farley, Faith, and friends are busy joyriding and fetting, Tobagonians are dying, and the management of our health care services on the island of Tobago is at an all-time low. Quite frankly, Madam Presiding Officer, as the Minority Leader, I make it my duty to traverse the length and breadth of Tobago, moving from Crown Point to Charlottesville.
Sorry, excuse Minority Leader. Sorry to interrupt. Did you say 11 months or 10 months? I think
10 months, sorry.
10? Okay, continue.
Right. Quite frankly, Madam Presiding Officer, as a Minority Leader, I make it my duty to traverse the length and breadth of Tobago. And I go all over Tobago. Sometimes I go in my plain clothes, sometimes I dress up nice. But what I've been hearing, the common thread I've been hearing all across Tobago, people saying to me, saying, "No, this young lady, I had real faith, I had high faith in faith to transform this healthcare system in Tobago because she sounded like she's bright." But after 11 months of faith at the helm, you know what they say now? They say they have lost all faith. They no longer have faith in faith. That is what they're saying, sadly. Madam Presiding Officer, simply put, this Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, and by extension, this Executive Council, they have failed the people of Tobago. Every single one of the 30,000 plus residents, all those school children in the gallery today, you have failed the people of Tobago. And you have failed because you have failed to do one of the most basic things that you can ask of any administration, which is to put a board, get some names and put it on a paper and send it down to the cabinet send it to the president, and you get a board. And 11 months later, 11 months, We are without a board, and I'm going to tell this house the kind of mess you all have created. The legal, the political, the social mess you have created because you have an organization operating illegally. This is not how we fix things. We fix things by doing the right things. You can't fix things doing the wrong thing. And this secretary, who's now our deputy chief secretary, has presided over a situation where we have the TRHA operating unlawfully, breaking the law. Madam Presiding Officer, the Regional Health Authority Act, Chapter 2905, Section 4.2, is pellucidly clear, black and white, clear. It states that each of the authorities listed at paragraph 3, which includes the Tobago Regional Health Authority, shall be managed by a board of directors. It didn't say may, it didn't say perhaps, it said must be managed by a board, shall. Note carefully, Madam Presiding Officer, the Act did not mention the position of secretary. No way they have secretary, no way they have administrator, nor chief administrator, not even the executive council is really mentioned in the Act. But it clearly specifies that the management of the Tobago Regional Health Authority is the sole responsibility of the Board of Directors. Madam Presiding Officer, additionally, Clause 1.1 and 1.4 of the second schedule of the Regional Health Authority Act, as well as Section 5.2, are all relevant in informing the process to appoint the TRHA board. And I just spelled it out. You get the secretary, she would find there's some positions that must be filled. You must have a legal person, an accountant, you have somebody from healthcare and that kind of thing, and you fill the board. You carry the note up to executive council approves, it goes 3 times, you get your confirmed minute, and you send it to the chief ad transmits, he could send it to the office of the Prime Minister, or could send it directly to the Minister of Health. And then the cabinet would sit, they would send it, then once they approve, they have no problem, no objection with your names. The cabinet simply sends it to the president will then issue instruments of appointment, and in that simple process you get a board. Yet, to my astonishment, we are here having to deal with this today because the secretary just don't know she job. Can't do she work, and I had to come now to tell she about how to do she work. And it is vexing because we shouldn't be here dealing with this. We asked you in May, what's going on with the board? We asked you, and you know what you tell me? In a couple of weeks we'll have an announcement. So is this, when you gave that commitment to the House, is this a situation where the secretary misled the House? And it is quite unfortunate that we in another session, because I would have definitely brought this for the consideration of the privileged committee, because that was a clear commitment that coming out of me in about a couple of weeks, a TRHA board would be announced. So if you told us that a TRHA board would be announced in a couple of weeks, and we are now here sitting down in October, where I have to light some fire under you to get you to act. Madam President, sometimes I just wonder what's going on with my colleagues. Sometimes I just really, really wonder what is going on the other side. Madam Presiding Officer, this administration seems to have an insatiable appetite for breaking the law. Insatiable. They love just putting the law aside and saying we got to do our own thing because we're big and we're bad. As far as I am to be pro-Tobagonian, but as far as I understand it, we are still part of Trinidad and Tobago. And as far as we remain part of this Twin Island Republic, we are governed by the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. So it means that we cannot behove unto ourselves powers that we do not have. The Executive Council is not an independent body in its own right. The Executive Council and the Tobago House of Assembly is subjected to Section 75 of the Constitution. So it means that you are beholden to even the cabinet as it now stands. So you can't just come and do your own thing. You can't just decide today that you want to pay board members whatever you feel like and you would disregard the State Enterprise Performance Manual. That is not how it works. And there's a place for persons who continue to break the law, and it's called the Integrity Commission. And it would hurt my heart to have to take colleagues on the other side to the Integrity Commission, because the next thing, once they find you guilty, is silver bracelets. And I would not want to see any one of you all caught out here in silver bracelets. I would not wish that on any one of you. So I'm warning my colleagues, let us follow the law. Yes, because you see, the Secretary for Works is doing what he wants with impunity, defying the EMA, flouting tendering procedures, blacklisting Tobago contractors.
Minority Leader, you're straying. You're straying.
No problem, Madam
You are
Presiding
straying.
Officer. I'm going to move on.
Thank you.
I'm moving on. I am going to move on.
Get back to...
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Right, but what we are seeing is that this Secretary of Health is failing to adhere to the law of the land. And this is going on for almost a whole year. And the Chief Secretary nonchalantly mentions this untenable situation of the absence of a board of directors of the TRHA as if it is no big deal. However, we on this side of the House stand resolute in our conviction that this is indeed a big deal. This is a serious matter, and this requires swift action. Madam Presiding Officer, the Regional Health Authority Act outlines some of the critical functions of the Board of Directors, such as to provide efficient systems for the delivery of health care, to operate, construct, equip, furnish, maintain, manage, secure, and repair all its property, to facilitate new systems of healthcare, to do all such things as are incidental or conducive to the attainment of the objectives of the authority. Madam Presiding Officer, simply put, the Board of Directors is important to ensure that healthcare practitioners and administrators are held accountable. There's no discrimination in the quality of service received. Hospitals and other public health facilities will be equipped with the required staff and equipment so that when the members of public visit a public health facility, you will receive quality care in a reasonable time. The operations of the TRHA is insulated or protected from the direct political interference and control. Madam Presiding Officer, another critical aspect of the work of the board is the function of its subcommittees. The main ones being the Finance Committee, which plans and manages the overall budget of the TRHA, the Tenders Committee, which evaluates and recommends award of contracts for goods and services, HR Committee, responsible for overseeing recruitment of specialist staff and dealing with IR issues, Audit Committee, which monitors and evaluates risks and gaps in the various systems of healthcare delivery, as well as making the finances audited by an independent body as to ensure that we have value for money and every red cent is accounted for. Madam Presiding Officer, given that the TRHA is without a board at this time, one cannot help but ask the question, as it relates to matters requiring the approval of the board, what process is being used to treat with those approvals? What is the process? And Madam Presiding Officer, this question is even more relevant now more than ever, because as I mentioned before, Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit raised this matter. She asked the question, and in the response given to us by the Secretary of Health, we were told that it is the CEO has a limit, And when the CEO's limit is met, then the administrator of the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection provides covering approval. And when that limit is met, then the chief administrator signs off on approvals. Madam Presiding Officer, I wish to indicate to this Honorable House that I have sought legal advice on this matter, and I'm advised that such an approach is improper, dangerous, and ultra-virus, the Regional Health Authority Act, for the CEO to be engaged in substantial expenditure outside of his delegated limit without the approval of the board. Therefore, the operations of the Tobago Regional Health Authority ought to be restricted to the approval of routine operational matters by the CEO in keeping with Section 10, subsection 6 of the Regional Health Authority Act. And the THA nor its agents can give the CEO of the TRHA direct instructions, since such instructions and such actions would be contrary to the Act and would also be deemed ultra-virus. However, if is one thing we know all too well about Farley and Friends, is that they all care little for the rule of law. And I'll leave that part alone. Madam Presiding Officer, it is important to note that the expenditure of the TRHA can easily exceed $500 million in any one financial year, and also account for approximately 1/3 of the entire THA budgetary allocation. In the absence of a functioning audit committee and board, the question therefore must be asked: who has been providing oversight of these funds? Further, the Chief Secretary, as the Secretary of Finance, must tell us whether he is comfortable with a situation where over $500 million of taxpayers' money have been managed only by a secretary and a CEO for the last 10 to 11 months, without the scrutiny of any independent auditing body. Please tell us, and I hope at some point when the Chief Secretary listens in, he would speak to the Tobago public and indicate whether he approves of this kind of untenable situation. Madam Presiding Officer, the Secretary of Health and the Chief Secretary must also tell us whether the CEO is operating in the position of CEO without a signed contract. At this point in time, we want to know whether the CEO of the TRHA is operating with a signed contract. And this is a serious. That is the point. The question is whether he's properly hired and whether those decisions he's presiding over are legal, whether it could stand up with standard scrutiny. Madam Presiding Officer, I am reminded of the case David Alexander Murphy versus the Nursing Council of Trinidad and Tobago, where Mr. Justice C. Prasad, the learned judge, ordered that all decisions effected by or on behalf of the Nursing Council of Trinidad and Tobago subsequent to 19th April 2019, upon the expiration of the term of the appointment of the members of the last council, are null and void and of no effect. So nothing that was done during that period, once the council, which is like the board of the TRHA, vacated their office, all decisions entered, all contracts entered, were deemed null, void, and of no effect. And the question is this the case with the TRHA at this time? Is it that all decisions, all contracts, all authorized payments are indeed null, void, and of no effect. And therefore, where does that leave us as an island? Where does that leave us? And I hope the Secretary will tell us when she comes. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm hearing hissing in the house, and we have school students in the gallery. I'm hearing hissing. Someone hissed. I know children just get disciplined for hissing.
Minority Leader, please continue.
All right.
Please.
Madam Presiding Officer, this judgment is instructive and can therefore be applied to the current TRHA embargo, where given that there is the absence of a board of directors and any decision taken by the CEO that requires board approval can in fact be deemed to be null, void, and of no effect, and can therefore be challenged in the court of law. Madam Presiding Officer, another important area that we need to look at is the question of the management of the performance of the CEO. In the absence of the board, who is appraising the CEO's performance? Who is holding this CEO accountable on behalf of the taxpayers? Is it that perhaps the Secretary is seeking to have unfettered control of the CEO, and that perhaps is the reason why it is taking so long to appoint the board? Madam Presiding Officer, is there collusion between the current CEO and the sitting Secretary to derail the gains of the Roxborough Hospital because she feels it was built by the PNM, and perhaps the Secretary is trying to construct a scenario to appear as she come in and fix it, and come in as a knight and shining armor who saves the day? We don't know, but these are valid questions at this time. Madam Presiding Officer, could this be the reason for inpatient services not yet being provided at Roxborough?
Are you rising on a point of order?
Thank you. Thank you.
The minority leader is imputing improper motive on behalf of the Secretary and the CEO. Based on his statement.
I know what the standing order is. Minority Leader. Continue, please.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Appreciate it. The truth sometimes is difficult, a difficult pill to swallow. Madam Presiding Officer, but I will not be distracted. Right. Yes. So, Madam Presiding Officer, could this be the reason for inpatient services not being provided at Roxborough as a strategic priority? Could this be the reason for not having a proper ambulance service? And why, whenever the ambulance is needed, there are no drivers? Why are pregnant mothers from the Far East forced to have to wait on an ambulance service to come from town to take them down back to town? Why? Madam Presiding Officer, but wasn't this one of the main reasons we in the PNM, we conceptualized and built the state-of-the-art $100 million healthcare facility in Tobago East in the first place, so that people in the east of Tobago can get the same kind of medical care just as people in the west of Tobago? That was the PNM's vision. However, almost a year later, all we are getting from this Secretary is only excuses after excuses, blame after blame, and game after game. Madam Presiding Officer, the Secretary of Health must tell us what is going on with the full operationalization of the Roxborough Hospital. It is a year later. What is going on? What is happening with the medical team that was interviewed, shortlisted, and they are waiting a letter of offer? Why aren't they hired? Is the TRHA recruitment being constrained by the fact that there is no board to approve such appointments? Tell us. Madam Presiding Officer, is this also the reason for the deplorable state of the dialysis service at the Bacolet facility? Madam Presiding Officer, I take no pleasure in declaring that the absence of the board has comatose the delivery of healthcare services on this island. No pleasure. Daily, I am inundated with calls and complaints from ordinary Tobagonians about the deplorable state of our healthcare service. Persons from my district are saying to me that when they go to the hospital in the morning for routine checkups, they don't reach back home until the next day. I know personally of a family that had an emergency and called for an ambulance and was told there are only 2 ambulances in service at the time and both of them were out. So the best option they had to do was to put on their hazard lights and drive down to the Scarborough Hospital at Signal Hill. Madam Presiding Officer, these are the realities of our citizens on the ground here in Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, as I was on my way to this August chamber, I received a call from one of my beloved senior citizens from my electoral district, Ms. Wilma. And Ms. Wilma is reminding me that when you go and make a contribution today, make sure and let the secretary know that we pensioners now get basic medication and we can't get pressure tablets. That is what I was told. We had to remind the secretary. Simple pressure tablets we seniors can't get. I'm also told that beds are scarce commodity at the Scarborough Hospital, and people are being sent home, knowing that perhaps they will not make it. I'm receiving calls from Tobagonians complaining that many of the machines are not working. Some of the medical departments are short-staffed. Doctors are saying they're frustrated. Nurses murmuring they're burnt out. And the list goes on and on and on. It is total chaos. Total chaos under faith. Madam Presiding Officer, the sad reality is that these complaints aren't isolated to the Department of Health, but seem to be a common thread throughout the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Social Protection, of which the Deputy Chief Secretary of the THA leads. Madam Presiding Officer, poor people are suffering under this current administration, while millions are being carted off to South and Central Trinidad to their UNC friends and financiers. Tobagonians are suffering.
Minority Leader, please.
Just last week, Tuesday, after I left the Lure Estate, and I want to thank my colleague for inviting me to that lovely session up there. I had a good time cooking that oil long, and it seemed like it took favor with the people who attended as well. I met a young lady who was just inconsolable because I came down and went straight to my office for Public Day and overwhelmed with tears. And her situation was that she took her last $20 to come down to town, thinking like a long time. When the PNM was there, could I just go into the division and once you tell them things hard, I need a little change to buy some groceries. There are vouchers already prepared and waiting to give poor people. And you know what happened to her? They tell she had to fill out this form. She had to come back with bank statement, husband pay slip, and all kind of madness for $500. If this is how we treat in poor people, if this is how we put in people first, then I don't want to see how we're going to be like Burna Boy and put people last. Because if all the cheating people, putting people first by telling them, poor people come into an office, and Madam Secretary, I'm asking you to review that system. That can't be right. Thankfully, well, I don't even know how to say the word, but I was told it's Sekiye fig or something. Sekiye fig. Because I walked in the district and I had 2 hands of banana, and I cut it up and I had it in the office. I was able to give you some Sekiye. Some people donated some small hampers I had in the office, and I was able to give you some hampers. Me and her money like the rest, so I couldn't give money. But she was able to get something by my office, and I hope it filled that hole. But Madam Presiding Officer, this administration campaigned on a promise to fix this. And the member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, had the most to say. Almost every other day she on TV and she pronouncing and enunciating on all things health, had all the answers. and now the people believed in what you had to say, and they have put you in the seat. And what are we getting? We're getting a situation where we can't get a board. The board is not there now to approve things to ensure the efficient delivery of the health service. And the whole thing falling down. Talk to your different practitioners. Talk to them. They could tell you it's a mess. It's a total chaos. You had to fix that, Secretary. You had to fix that. Madam Presiding Officer, it is my understanding that it took some roughing up from the Chief Secretary, which finally forced the Secretary of Health into action. Perhaps that might explain why it was the Chief Secretary who commented on the TRHA board at mandate Monday and not the line secretary. Madam Presiding Officer, I anticipate that the Secretary will come here in our usual way, very aggressive with her rebuttal, and will attempt to pour cold water over this motion by indicating the Executive Council has already submitted a list of recommended directors for the board of the TRHA. However, it is important for the Secretary to understand that too late shall be the cry. Too late, the destruction done happen already, and some of it is irreparable. Some of the destruction that happened, irreparable. Madam Presiding Officer, the damage has been done to our healthcare system, and I feel it's too late to do any kind of repair at this time. I also anticipate that the Secretary will also come to play the broken record. We know, come to tell us what the PNM didn't do, what they do, how long they did do, because we hear it. Who take 21 years, and we know the usual refrain. That could make a good calypso now. But at the end of the day, the people voted for change. There's a reason why. I alone standing here, and 14, must be 17 are you all over there. There's a reason why. So you don't have to tell us that again. We understand why we are here. But while we are here, we will be seeking the interests of the people, and whether we stay here for 4 years, for 20 years, we will be here serving the people, because serving the people is what we know. And if at a point in time people decide that they didn't serve you well, that is their right to do. But you who have the opportunity, you got to serve better. You can't serve worse. Because if you're going to come and do the same thing, or a little bit different of the same thing, or worse of the same thing, then you really ain't changed nothing. So when you come here to tell us and remind us of everything that you believe that the PNM didn't do, the people don't know that already. So if you're planning to do that, I would advise that don't waste your time. Don't waste your time at all. And my information is, even if you come to try to compare the tenure of the PNM when it comes to appointing boards, the PNM, there's no point. I challenge you when you come to show me a time where the PNM would have allowed a board to go for almost a year without appointing. I know there was a time, and I'm sure the Secretary should know as well, that there was a time when the TRHA board took a little bit of time, because what we had was the THA Executive Council would have taken their position and taken their action to appoint the board. But you also had the Minister of Tobago Development also believing that she could also appoint a board. And what happened is that the cabinet had 2 recommendations in front of them, and they now had to seek legal guidance as to who is the bona fide, who is the authoritative body, who had the authority to appoint the board, and that took some toing and froing. There's some headlines here from the newspapers where Chief Secretary to meet with Prime Minister to settle this matter. So if you're going to come to talk about that, try again. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm advised that so I dealt with that, and I'm wrapping up now, Madam Presiding Officer. What we are witnessing today, playing out in front of our eyes, is a classic case of poor leadership combined with bad management on the part of Farley, Faith, and his friends. Madam Presiding Officer, as I conclude my contribution, I want to stress to my colleagues the importance of adhering to our Constitution and the rule of law. You see, Madam Presiding Officer, our Constitution is that sacred vanguard that stands as a beacon of protection for the people from its government. And the day you have an administration so comfortable in ignoring and disregarding the laws of a country, the result can only lead to chaos, confusion, and anarchy. It is in this context I want to offer a general caution to my colleagues in this House, and I'm going to go very soon, to let us all strive to follow the law. Madam Presiding Officer, it was the former Prime Minister and President, E.N.R. Robinson, who reminded us that streams flow into river and rivers into sea, meaning bad habits often leads to big mistakes, and the more it is repeated, the more dangerous it becomes. We beg and we have sense. The law is clear. The process is quite simple. There is absolutely no excuse, none whatsoever, for this inordinately long delay. Let's fix this now. Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move.
Minority Councillor.
Motion?
Members, the question proposed is, whereas the Regional Health Authorities Act, Chapter 29, Section 5 requires that the authority be managed by a board of directors, and whereas this is necessary for the lawful, effective, and efficient operation of the healthcare system on the island. And whereas this current Executive Council has failed for 10 months to initiate the appropriate processes to appoint a new Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors, and whereas this represents a dereliction of duty and a flagrant breach of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, be it resolved that this House agrees that the Executive Council should take immediate and appropriate actions towards the urgent appointment of a Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors. Member, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Let me start by indicating that I think that we have actually done a pretty good job of the refurbishments that have happened in this House. Yeah. And I know, given the limited finances to do it, I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish in that period. Let me also start by thanking those in the Tobago Regional Health Authority who have been working tirelessly. We have come out of a time where most other sectors kind of had a break, but those in the Tobago Regional Health Authority did not have a break at all. They went through, they pushed through, and in the middle of everything, we've been able to come out of this successfully. And I want to publicly thank all of them for the hard work. I know that it's not perfect. I know this. Almost every Monday morning, I jokingly with my colleagues speak about all of the things that we need to fix and we need to change within the within the Tobago Regional Health Authority. But coming into this exercise today actually forced me to rethink how much work they have actually been doing and how well they've been functioning given the situation. I would ask us to make up our minds, what do we want to do? Do we want to take immediate action because we think immediate action would resolve an issue? Because that is in essence what the motion is asking for. But then after you ask, Madam Presiding Officer, for us to take immediate action, you then turn around and say, too little, too late, it's not going to solve anything. So maybe we need to rethink exactly what we are asking us to do. Because if it means that you have already given up on the process, then maybe we should have rescinded this motion completely. Because in your mind, through you, Madam Presiding Officer, it is too little, too late. See, you also, through you, Madam Presiding Officer, the Minority Leader indicated that, yes, the process, which in essence was outlined, there were a couple inaccuracies, but in general, the process that was outlined is the process. And this Tobago House of Assembly, this Executive Council, has actually done that. The names that we have picked have already been sent, and we really are just waiting for the Cabinet to do what they need to do to get that done. But that's fine, because what we are talking about is how we actually influence people's lives. Now, I know the word illegal has been thrown about several times, and the thing about legality and illegality is that it can easily be tested. It can easily be tested. Now, what we are experiencing is probably something that we are not used to. What we are experiencing is probably something that is not a conventional way of doing things. But if we really want to test the legality of the system, that can actually happen. And there is no reason for us to not test the legality of what is currently happening if we honestly believe that it is illegal. One of the things we came into is something that is known as a TRHA governance plan that was done. The date of the one that we have been working with is actually 2011. And that TRHA governance plan is one that in essence outlines how the TRHA is to function as it relates to the board, the CEO, as it relates to the Tobago House of Assembly and all of that. All of those are outlined in the TRHA governance plan that is being used. I would say, though, that we are actually currently working on updating that TRHA governance plan, because while we've been thinking through what has worked and what has not worked, and why it has worked and why it has not worked, we recognize that within the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection, there are inefficiencies within the Tobago House of Assembly component of the management of healthcare on the island. So one of the things you would hear me continually speak about is the fact that we are restructuring the division, and that includes actually implementing a Department of Health. And that Department of Health, Madam Presiding Officer, would in essence do all of the background work to allow us to say, these are our health concerns. This is the best way to fix these health concerns. TRHA, we are asking you to be a service provider, full stop. So we can say very clearly to the Tobago Regional Health Authority, these are the 10 things we want you to do. We are giving you $10 million to do it. And at the end of the period, we say we have done the monitoring and evaluation of that. You've fulfilled your side of the bargain, and we're all happy. That part of management of health currently does not exist in the Tobago space, and it is actually being developed as we speak. And as a result of that, this TRHA governance plan is being reworked to include those kinds of inclusions. As the minority leader indicated, that governance plan is actually what outlines what the limits are in terms of what the CEO can spend and so forth, and that is what we've been following over the last couple months. The minority leader spoke as if to indicate the only period where we did not have a board of directors for the TRHA was that period where there was that situation between the Tobago House of Assembly and the Minister of Tobago Development or whatever. But in fact, over the last how many years, there have actually been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 periods where there were no boards. And it may not have been the best situation, and the quality of care may not have necessarily been the best at that time, but in those periods, there wasn't an issue of illegality either. So it's not just at this point. We have, going all the way back, March 2006 to July 2006, July 2008 to April 2009, March 2011 to August 2011, August 2013 to March 2014, April 2016 to June 2016, August, I said that already, and of course, July 2020 to September 2020. Now, when you add up all of those, that is actually close to about 3 years of no actual board being appointed in the Tobago Regional Health Authority before the Progressive Democratic Patriots, so Farley and Friends, or now I understand it's Farley, Fate and Friends, it's okay, I can take that, has been operating. It's kind of coincidental that the people who said Farley and Friends and the people who now saying Farley, Fate and Friends sound so similar, but that is a different story. Now, the thing about the situation with the Board of Directors of the Tobago Regional Health Authority is that, okay, maybe I should step back. The THA Act says that the Tobago House of Assembly is responsible for health care. The Secretary is responsible for policy. No, the TRHA Act does not speak about the Secretary or anything like that, but the RHA Act does say that as it relates to the TRHA, the Tobago House of Assembly is the entity that provides policy and so forth. Now, that is also very clear in the document. And it is also clear in the fact that since we have come into existence, I have actually had to make it a point to speak with the Minister of Health, who, by the way, we actually have a pretty decent working relationship, to speak with the Minister of Health and say to him, I know that we have been having this total separation feeling of Tobago versus Trinidad, But what makes more sense is for us not to be fighting each other. What makes more sense is for whatever the Ministry of Health is agreeing on in terms of policy, let us include Tobago in those discussions so that whatever the Ministry of Health is proposing is one that already takes the Tobago Regional Health Authority stance in as part of the decision making. So now, for example, we have the CEO of the TRHA being included in meetings with the minister, with the other CEOs in Trinidad and so forth, because we recognize that things were happening out there that we would only find out about after the fact, when in fact it would actually make more sense in terms of actual application of what we're doing for us to all be at the table and have the discussion so that when it is being rolled out, it's rolled out properly, including what is needed for Tobago. Now, speaking about CEOs, I think it's important to note that even though we have a whole period where there was about 2 to 3 years with no board over the last how many years, one of the reasons why we have the issue with the quality of health care on the island has to do with the fact that the office of the CEO for the TRHA is actually one that has been a revolving door so often. So nobody never really get a chance to get in, sit down, buckle down, understand what is happening, and then actually implement what is needed to happen. And let's just give a couple examples. We have one that was there, an actual CEO, from August 2001 until about 2002. We then have an acting, and I'm saying you have to pay attention to CEO versus acting, because CEO means they've actually been hired and appointed and all of that, right? We have an acting CEO from 2002 July to 2003 January. We have a CEO from 2003 to 2005. Coincidentally, the acting became the actual CEO at that point. 2005 February to October 2005, another acting CEO. 2005 November to about 2007, a CEO was in place. 2007 July to May 2010, another acting CEO. So you realize what's going on. These are all different. All of them is different people except the first two, where I said the acting went into the CEO. 2010 June to 2011, CEO. August 2011 to February 2012, acting CEO. February 2011 to August 2014, CEO. Not same people. June 2014 to May 2015, acting CEO. June 2015 to November 2015, CEO. Now one come and go so quickly, we're not even sure what happened. November 2015 to October 2016, acting CEO. November 2016 to acting. October 2017 to June 2018, somebody in the board performing the duties of CEO. June 2018 to August 2018, acting CEO. And August to November 2018, this is a new one, interim CEO. November 2018 to June 2019, acting CEO. June 2019 to March 2020, CEO. Then we have another interim CEO, which is what we came into. And now we have a CEO who is there. Now, anyone who is listening to that list would recognize that any organization where the leadership of the organization has changed so many times is one that in and of itself is going to be difficult to function because you really don't know what will happen tomorrow. And no one has been there long enough to even make a real dent into what is required. I'm not going to be very long because the reality is the process to get the board is now out of our hands. The reality also is, though, that even when there were boards in place, there were some decisions that just don't make no sense. So, for example, and I will just use this one example again because it's already after 3. I don't want to be here for very long. A board made a decision that nurses who were moving up the ladder, public service nurses moving up the ladder, doing all they have to do to move up the ladder, when they get to the point of being so good that we could send them out in the district, you know, the DHVs, the one in the Bronx, that we have so much respect for these nurses. A board made a decision to take away all of the service of all of those people, those nurses. And if you apply and you interview and you're successful at the interviews and you want to become a district health visitor, you have to give up all your service and get a contract. That is a decision that was made by a duly constituted legal board in the past of the TRHA. And we are trying to figure out now how we are going to reverse stuff like that because it actually affects people's real lives and livelihoods. So, I have said it publicly. I have said it publicly that I have wanted to honestly take time to find the people who are competent and who would make rational decisions to place them on all of the boards that are under the jurisdiction of the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. Particularly this one, because the process for this one, as the minority leader rightly explained, is out of our hands. It now has to go to the cabinet for them to make a decision, and that we are waiting for. Now, instead of coming here and saying you want me to do it, but it doesn't make sense because it's too late, maybe it is worth contacting your colleagues in the cabinet to have them. Now, granted, I do not think, because this executive council has actually had a pretty decent working relationship with the cabinet, I don't think that there's anything malicious happening right now in terms of it being unduly delayed or anything like that just because we are on different sides of the political fence. But maybe with some prodding, we will get it a little faster.
Clarification. I just want to pose a question. Can the
It's a debate, Madam Presiding Officer. We're in the middle of a debate. You can't ask a question in the middle of a debate.
Sorry. It's just a point of clarification. I just want the Secretary.
Madam Presiding Officer, we are in the middle of a debate. This is not a question and answer segment.
I'm just asking the Secretary to tell us when was
Minority
the
Leader,
information
Minority
transmitted?
Leader, you have 30 minutes to wrap up. at the end of the member's question. If it's not a point of order, let the member continue, please. Please, members, allow the member to finish her presentation. Member, continue.
Thank you. Just shoot a call and say to your colleagues, this is absolutely critical. I think, and it is my view, speaking on your behalf, that this is something that needs to happen quickly. So we are asking for it to happen quickly. We would actually appreciate that. Now, we would appreciate that because I am actually very happy with the individuals who we've identified to be on the board. And one of the reasons I did not speak about it is because I understand the process that we have to go through, and I did not want to say, we are making an announcement when the process was not completed. There will be a big hoopla when the process is completed. Now, let me take a little bit of the time, though, to do two things. One, before I forget, I hear people have been messaging me. No, let me do that after. Given that we have not had a board, and given that the minority leader believes that the thousands of workers at the Tobago Regional Health Authority have been providing such absolutely horrible service to the people of Tobago, I asked them
it's just a basic error, right? And I didn't ask you for lessons.
Okay.
Madam Presiding Officer,
Member.
I never said
the
workers.
member on the other side indicated that individuals meet him all the time and complain about being up at the hospital for hours and so forth. Yes, I know that it have DR in front of my name.
Minority Leader, can we allow the member to finish, please?
There is a DR in front of my name, but I am certainly not at the hospital providing actual service. So if we are talking about the absolute horrible service that people are complaining about, then it is obvious that we are talking about the individuals who are actually providing that service. And as much as I would have loved that to be me, that is not me. That is not me. Madam Presiding Officer, but because of that, I have actually asked the members of the Tobago Regional Health Authority to provide for us what they think are some of the wins that have happened over the last couple months. And I actually...
Member, you have 5 minutes.
That's okay. I am happy that I did that, because even though I am also frustrated sometimes with how slowly we have been moving things along, this document actually shows that they've actually been doing a whole lot of stuff over the period, and they've been doing phenomenal work. Now, granted, it is not perfect and there's always room for improvement. But we have, for example, ICU in preceptor training where nurses are actually learning how to use these machines and stuff like that. That didn't happen before. Neonatal resuscitation training, where practically everybody who has been part of the maternity ward and pediatrics and so forth, they are there so that they now know how to resuscitate neonates, the little babies and so forth, that kind of thing. Yes, I am actually happy that we finally have services happening at the Roxborough Hospital, because I remember when the Prime Minister came up years ago and cut ribbon and all kind of thing. So yes, I am very happy that we are having actual services at the. And no, It is not perfect, and no, we do not have inpatient services yet. And I'm actually sending a call out to some of the specialists that are out there, to Begonians who might actually want to come home, because we realize there's actually a serious HR issue, where we are asking for specialist doctors for the different fields to apply, and then we're not getting the applications, we're not getting them in. So if you're a Tobagonian out there and you want to come back, certainly join us. We've seen so many patients at the A&E now that, by the way, runs from Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I will skip through quite a bit of this, and I would actually go to some of the things we spoke about earlier as being able to provide, because a lot of these things are what the workers at the Tobago Regional Health Authority really were clamoring for. We have 703 gratuity payments have actually been made for this period thus far. That is totaling over $29 million of gratuity payments. So, remember before all of the elections, before we used to hear all of the workers complaining about they didn't get a gratuity, they didn't get a gratuity, they didn't get a gratuity. They are getting their gratuities. Yeah? We hear them talk about how the TRHA owes so many people, and that is true. The TRHA owes so many people because they have not been paying the bills. And by the way, let me just put this in. You see that talk about them vouchers? Them food vouchers that people were just giving away over in the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. And for the last day of the fiscal year, for my administrator to call me and tell me, you know, we owe all of them groceries. It's millions of dollars we owe the groceries. It's millions of dollars we owe the groceries. Those same vouchers that they have been giving, we owe for them. We have not paid for them yet.
Okay,
Madam
members.
Presiding
Okay.
No apologies for feeding to me.
We understand.
Madam
Thank you.
Presiding Officer, we have
Continue, member.
paid to TRHA suppliers a total of over $160 million in owing year, because all of that was owing. That is, and let me just say too, one of the reasons why it's hard to get things, the consumables, is because we wasn't paying the bills. So the suppliers don't want to give us more stuff because we're not paying the bills. So those are the things we have been working on over the couple months to get it to that point so that we now have a better relationship with those suppliers. And of course, we have the 3-year contracts, because another decision is the same kind of decision that boards have made, is to move away from giving people permanency as public servants in the Tobago Regional Health Authority and give them contracts and give them short-term contracts over the last how many years. So that's what we've been doing over the last 10 months, even without the board, giving those hundreds and hundreds of temporary workers who are getting month to month.
Your time has since elapsed.
Madam Presiding Officer, I now rise to move that the speaking time for the member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, be extended by a further 10 minutes.
Members, the question is that 10 minutes of additional speaking time be given to the member. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it. Member, you have 10 additional minutes of speaking time. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I don't think I'll need all of it. I just wanted to say that, yes, so we have a situation now where we came in with very demoralized healthcare workers, and we've actually been working to bring them up to a place where they feel more comfortable to provide the quality service that I know and we know they can actually provide. I would want to round out, Madam Presiding Officer, with correcting something that is inaccurately circulating. And I got a message about it, I think yesterday, and I just want to be on record as saying, When the Minister of Health spoke in the budget presentations a couple of weeks ago, spoke about, and I almost hate this term now, ex gratia payments to healthcare workers. And what was indicated in his presentation was that these payments were going to be made for the RHAs in Trinidad, and he spoke about them because that's under the ministry. And he did not include the Tobago Regional Health Authority. For obvious reason, the minister is not directly responsible for the Tobago Regional Health Authority. And what I want to state explicitly is that those payments, when it is of course approved and they send the money from Trinidad and all of that good stuff, will take place for all of the healthcare workers in Tobago, all. Because there's a rumor going around that it's only the doctors and nurses that might get it. That is not true. Because we recognize over the last couple of years that those who you probably don't think about were probably the most important. The sanitation workers were probably the most important people in the healthcare system at that time. So all of the workers will be getting it. And that happened again because this Executive Council is trying our best to govern Tobago and to do it in a way that makes sense and to not necessarily make enemies with the cabinet just because we're on different sides of the political fence. So when the minister contacted me, even before anyone knew publicly about it, the minister called me and said, Faith, he calls me Sister Faith, we are doing this. Send me the number, send me the dollar figure for Tobago. And that is what I did. I sent the full dollar figure. And then when I heard the uproar about them only speaking about 4 RHA, I then messaged him again. I said, what's going on? He said, Sister Faith is wasting me, not the figure. That is the figure I put in. It will just, of course, come through Ministry of Finance because that is where the money comes through to get to Tobago. So to all of the healthcare workers in Tobago, those of you who are part of the Tobago Regional Health Authority, and those who worked with the Office of the County Medical Officer of Health, all of you, that payment, as promised by the minister, should be coming to you as soon as they work out the process for that. In the end, Madam Presiding Officer, I would ask those of us on this side to, why are we here at this time? Be it resolved that this House agrees that the Executive Council should take immediate and appropriate actions towards the urgent appointment of a Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors. This Executive Council has already done that, and it is now up to the colleagues in Trinidad to do their part to bring this to an end. Again, Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to thank all of the healthcare workers, all of the social support workers, all of the social protection workers, because that is what they do. That is what they do, unlike what those on the other side are calling them. That is what they do. I would like to thank all of them for all of their hard work during this period. And because of that, we are all going to move into the next period in a better position, improving our quality as we go forward. Madam Presiding Officer, I thank you.
Assemblyman Duke.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And I wish to thank all the speakers who have gone before, Minority Leader included, and the Secretary for Health, Member for Belgarden, Glamorgan. These are serious times in the island of Tobago. These are times when the populace is looking for more. We campaign on giving the populace more. These are times when it's not good enough to have a near miss. We must always hit bullseye. I understand the efforts of the Secretary for Health, who is a member for Belgarden Goodwood. But I dare say those efforts are not good enough for me nor for the persons we all represent. Any government or quasi-government, upon entering office, must deem a priority the state boards that needs replacing, or you leave the state boards that are in place until you replace them. It is a tragedy that we took office in December 2021, and we are now just a few weeks away from December 2022, and I'm hearing the Secretary for Health, member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, stating over there that, hey, we have submitted the names. That's unacceptable, totally unacceptable. This is the reason why we crave for autonomy. This is the reason why we campaign on autonomy. Not to be sitting ducks on a pond waiting for someone in Trinidad to give us the okay. But again, like the board of the Tobago Regional Authority, the idea of Tobago's autonomy has taken a back seat. We are in trouble, Madam Presiding Officer. We are in serious trouble. And this is not partisan politics. We as a people in Tobago, we are in trouble. And we have to quit the game that say, I win, you lost, I on this side, you on that side. We have to always bear in mind that when we come inside here, we come inside here as one house. This is the Tobago House of Assembly. It's not PDP on that side and PDM on that side. Together, Minority Council and the Executive Council, together, and the presiding officer and all those other persons inside make up the House of Assembly. And so this important matter being brought to the Tobago House of Assembly should take on a little more significance from the speakers. This is not about the THA forming a governance plan or some governance policy. This is not about training people in postnatal and healthcare is doing well. This has to do with the legality of our health care services. Whether or not the CEO has been properly appointed, who appoints him? I know the THA Act says the Tobago House of Assembly can employ persons on contract, but I dare say to them, the THA Act cannot override the RHA Act. I repeat, the THA Act cannot override the RHA Act. They are two separate acts. One deals specifically with THA, yes, and the other deals with the RHA. It is illegal for anybody to employ the CEO without the board. The RHA Act, which is on par with the THA Act, those acts are passed by Parliament. That means an authority by statute, by law. Not some flimsy, whimsy, wishy-washy authority that somebody make up and register as a company. This is legal. And that authority states that the board shall employ the CEO, not the secretary, not the executive council. It's illegal. That is illegal. And some 10, call it 11 months or what, he not months after, you come here strutting your stuff as if you've done what you can do. Not good enough. Where was the 100-day plan? Where was the 100-day plan? Where was the emergency situation? We entered here during a pandemic. We didn't enter here on a nice ship, joyriding. This was a pandemic. People were dying. The morgues were piling up. People couldn't get the right kind of assistance. Persons were dying under the tent. We were in a quandary. People were pulling out their hairs. This is when we needed the board. But that's when the board wasn't yet. And still, we don't know when they submitted the request. They didn't say. At least I did not hear. Madam Presiding Officer, this is a house that ought to be the house that represents Tobagonians. I cringe. I shudder in my boots to sit here and to listen to how we trivialize issues of health. Let me tell you something. The RHA Act, I mind you, is not beneath the THA Act. They are on par. Both of them are statute laws. One cannot conflict with the other because the laws of Trinidad and Tobago prevent that. RHA deals with RHA specifically, and it has to be adhered to. And so even the RHA Act, they make mention where they were pulling persons on the board, and they say one member must have local government experience, etc. They say except for Tobago House of Assembly, because they understand it is different in Tobago House of Assembly. But what they were trying to say is that one of the members on the board should have the experience of the governance model wherein it finds itself. That's why these are called regional health authorities. One down south, because the people are a little different. One up north, the people are a little bit different. One in the east, one in central. They all appeal to a specific demographic. That's the whole purpose of it. Yeah? Took one in Tobago. So let's get things straight. Let's understand this is not a joke. This is not about whether they did this or they did that, or people getting money or not. Irrelevant. Irrelevant. My question today is, who will be held accountable? Who will be held accountable? Not the secretary. She cannot be held accountable by law. Though the secretary wants to be a boss. She's a boss maybe for those who spraying the road for insects. Those who cut in the road. For those persons, she's not a boss for the RHA. The RHA is clear. The boss for the RHA is the Minister of Health. And this is why, before they could even approve the board, it must have the Minister of Health blessings and the Parliament blessings. But they must come to the Minister of Health. Must. If you don't see it, you can't go nowhere. So let's understand our role. That is what it means to live in a country where you are a ward. I want you to understand that, you know. Some of my colleagues on the other side, and God knows I love them, but we're just different levels of the game. We are simply a ward. It means that there's nothing we can do without Trinidad supervising or stamping it. And so you find health services under the THA. Some maybe under 23. You'll find the health services. When you look at Schedule 5, it's the 23rd matter, health services. Not the TRHA, health services. Spray for rats, spray for mosquito, cut the bush, keep it low. Those kind of things. Health services. What speaks to the RHA is Section 25 of the THA Act. And 25, subsection 3, it says where a statutory authority, and I'm going to skip some words, that where a statutory authority or state enterprise provides services in Tobago as the RHA, that authority or enterprise shall, in exercising its duties in relation to those services, act in accordance with the policies and programs of the Assembly. I wish to repeat, this is deep, and maybe you might need a midwife to deliver this. It's very deep. Where a statutory authority or a state enterprise, such as the RHA, provides a service or services in Tobago, that authority or state enterprise shall, in exercising its duties, taking care of people, ensuring the debt is provided for, whatever, you know, taking babies, whatever. That in exercising its duties in relation to those services, act in accordance. This is the important part. This is the part where THA has a role. Act in accordance. This is the part where the good secretary and the chief secretary and my colleagues, we all have a role. This RHA shall act in accordance with the policies and programs of the Assembly. Let me drop it like it's hot. Because we have an Assembly that is playing who could take the best camera pick, while they are ignoring the necessary policies or programs that are required to run the health system. That shouldn't have been a 100-day activity. Where are the policies? Now we're hearing about, what do you fancy what they're calling it? TRHE governance plan. What are the policies? Madam Presiding Officer, the role of the THA, because the problem we are having with the absence of the board is not that of the secretary. I will not blame the secretary, even though she may be guilty. I will not blame the secretary. I'm blaming the Tobago House of Assembly for that. All of us are guilty, including myself. All of us are guilty. You see, the role and responsibility of the Assembly under Section 25(1), it says, without prejudice to Section 75(1) of the Constitution, the Assembly shall, in relation to Tobago, be responsible for the formulation and implementation of policy in respect to the matters set out in the 5th schedule. What are the policies? What are the policies that this THA has made, this new THA has made regarding health? What are the type of discussions we are having at executive meeting? What are the type of discussions we are having within the various divisions? Are they lending itself to the formulation of policies, or are we now trying to come up with some TRHA, or we call it governance plan, that is being worked by the THA? You see, there cannot be any TRHA plan without a board in place. No, because the board has the wherewithal to treat with these issues. Yeah? Unless the THA is having some specialists do some consultation and provide some report. But even that, the board is the person who's responsible for the TRHA. And let me give you this example. When I once occupied the position of Deputy Chief Secretary, and I was told I have responsibility for monitoring the policy and evaluating it of all divisions, I had cause to pay attention to what's going on in health. And understanding that there was no board there, Madam Presiding Officer, I decided to write the CEO, only asking him to present the obvious. I said, what are your policies on sick leave? What are your policies on vacation leave? What are your policies for grievance handling, etc.? Madam Presiding Officer, in a different incarnation, I was the president of the PSA, and I know those policies. But I must divorce myself from what I know and pretend I don't know and ask for those policies. Peradventure they change and I don't know. To my surprise, the CEO did not respond, or the person who's acting as CEO, who claimed to be CEO, the purported CEO, let me call him that, because as far as I understand, he's illegal. Who hired him? The executive can't hire him. The TRH's Act says how he should be hired, and he has to stick to that. Good point by the minority leader. You must take a little further any care for that. He raised a point. He saw it. So many degrees on that side, more degrees than a thermometer, and they couldn't see it. Or maybe they saw it and pretending to be blind. I know my brother Wasp would have seen that. He's a groundsman, he's a linesman. He knows when to something out of line. He knows when something is foul. You know foul play. My brother Wasp, he knows foul play. You see, on that side, they tell him, I can't laugh, you know. On that side, they tell him, say, hold one head. Reminds me of a story I watched one time. It was a painful story, but a real story of a preacher, American preacher, very persuasive, took a whole number of people and carried them to Guyana, a place called Jonestown. Built a beautiful place. And when time was no more, time against him, he mixed Kool-Aid with a dangerous substance, and he told them drink it. Most of them drank it blindly because they believe in him. I want to say to my colleagues, in this house, no matter how pretty something look, no matter who tell you to drink it, examine the contents. Self-preservation is the first thing. I charge my colleagues today that the board has to be in place now. Any act done by the CEO is, the purported CEO, is illegal. There's something called the doctrine of necessity. You understand that? The place needs to run. That's why you have the old board there. That's why they should have told the old board, hold on, you can't leave. You remain there. You cannot leave. You can imagine we are trying to have THA without a presiding officer and saying, well, we must talk. Even if she's gone out and the deputy presiding officer not there, let's talk because we're intelligent. You can imagine that? It's illegal. You can imagine a CEO operating without a board. Well, I could tell you the results of that. When I wrote him, no response. I wrote him again, no response. I asked him for basic policies. I wrote again. And I said, at that time, I brought it to the executive attention that, hey, I write this man trying to get information and no response. You know what they're going to say in that meeting? I tell you, I believe some of these people are in a place likened to Jonestown, a place where there's a religious leader leading them, giving them something beautiful in a bottle, tell them drink it, drink it. And some of them are consuming it, killing themselves and the nation. They are saying to me at the meeting that I should write the secretary. But where is the board? If there is no board, the only person who has any legality to be on the board is the CEO. Because the CEO is a de facto member of the board. He can't vote, but he can be there at any board meeting, can contribute. I don't know a secretary could be there now. There's no board. The closest thing to the board is the CEO managing himself, or the purported CEO. That's the kind of trouble we have. Let me tell Tobago this, that when we think about the composition of the board's composition is not up to the THA. It's defined again by the RHA Act. These things are legal. It says that you must have someone in there who represents the public interests. Yes. And their welfare, basic people. A man on the street, a street man representing them. Then it says also you must have a registered medical practitioner, a registered nurse, a THA employee, and you must have specialists in the areas of finance, accounting, economics, business management, personal management, IR, which is industrial relations, and law, or any other thing. It's a well-composed board that will present the best feedback on any issue. I hope that whatever they present reflects that. Trinidad and Tobago has 45 state boards. We have the TRHA, for which we are responsible. And that one that we have responsibility for, that one that we have responsibility for, is left without a board. You know, Stolly Park is not a state board, right? That's a board created by THA. It's a different kind of board. It's a ply board. That we call Stolly Park Quarry. It's a ply board. You see, TRHA, that is what we call Green Heart board. That is what we call board. That is a board that ought to be dealt with and treated specially. Not to my friends on the other, on my side, I would say, but mostly the other side. Not to my friends and my brothers and my sisters on that side. Let me tell you how we are reeling from lack of a state board. Because there is no state board, the dogma that says we have a hospital in Roxborough continues to run. We are having media presentation about so often, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, Madam Presiding Officer. fooling the people of Tobago as if we are illiterate when the Scarborough General Hospital is way superior than the Roxborough Hospital. The Scarborough Health Center is superior to the Roxborough so-called hospital. Why? There are no specialists operating in the Roxborough so-called hospital. There is a retired gynecologist there. He's a good man, but retired. They brought back. Yeah, that's the specialist. There's no anesthesiist, or whatever you want to call it. The man has put people to sleep. There's no transfusionist. The man will take the blood and put blood inside of you in case you need blood. There's no specialist mental health person there. The specialist doctors are not there. Just simple house officers doing their day-to-day job. They claim that they open from 7 to 7. Just today I spoke to a mother who was grieving. She said her granddaughter was sick, and she carried her granddaughter at 5 p.m. to Roxborough, and they said there was no doctor there, doctor gone. You can imagine that? Where is the doctor quarters in Roxborough? Roxborough is far from Scarborough. Where is the doctor quarters that we are saying the doctor for this area resides here? Those are the responsibilities of the board. The board would have fixed those things. Where is the nurses' quarters? I could show you. It's opposite what we call courtyard. The galvanizers are flying off and cutting power lines about so often. Totally derelict building. And they refuse to fix that building up. It once was a home to nurses who worked overnight at the health center and keep Roxborough and that entire eastern region well protected. There is none now. That's the role of the RHA board, to ensure that doctors are housed, nurses are housed, and other specialist persons are housed. But there is none there. None there. We need an RHA board to create a dental department. The Roxborough Health Center had a dental department, you know. No dental taking place up there right now. A man can take with a rotten teeth. That's the kind of problem. Madam Presiding Officer, we are just understaffed at Roxborough. They treat it as a glorified health center. Big, big building. But the operations are likened to that of a health center. If there's a serious accident, those persons involved will have to be taken to Scarborough. You can't sedate them. You can't put them to sleep and operate on them right away. And if you go to Scarborough, Scarborough is in a bad condition. You might have to fly them out to Trinidad when the thing gets serious. But the journey from Roxborough to Scarborough is not an easy one. You have to fly past 4 traffic lights, and you have to turn 73 corners. I checked them myself. 73 corners. It's like a merry-go-round. It's like in Walt Disney, your head gets busy. People get sick just from traveling from Scarborough to Roxborough and Roxborough to Scarborough. Not countryman who get sick, but town people get sick, just going up like that. Too much corners. And whereas we're supposed to be self-sufficient, we have a situation where we have to run to town or fly to town. But when you check out the cost of a helicopter flight.
Member, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I know the minority leader would extend my minutes if so times there. Because he understands when good talk is being made on the platform here. It's amazing to understand we campaigned, my colleagues, my brothers and sisters that are around me on that side, this side, and wherever you find they are. And I recognize the shepherd has not come today. He has left the sheep to wander in the wilderness. I reckon the shepherd is not there today. But Madam Presiding Officer, we all campaigned. And my good friend, Dr. Faith B. Israel, member for Belgarden and Dallaford, knows fully well. We said, instead of flying people out, We are going to fly specialists in. It's cheaper. It's cheaper. Why isn't the doctors and nurses that deal with trauma and those people who put to sleep and all those blood transfusionists, all those technical names, why aren't those people housed within the vicinity of the Roxborough Hospital? Why aren't we prepared for any foul play? That is the role of the board. If we had a good board, then they would have created policies and they would have directed the operation of that thing. But what we have going on here is someone who's not even a medical doctor. Just have a love for medicine and doctor business, sitting on top there and making all these decisions for like 11 months now. Yeah? 11 months now. And they're comfortable with that. I beg this house to understand that we are in a situation. We are in serious problems. Because what we campaign on, we ought to be delivering. They spoke about eye surgery in Roxborough. Well, imagine I am the representative for the district, and no one has written to me officially about eye surgery for Roxborough. And if there's any member within my constituency that want eye surgery, that's what's going on. A law unto themselves, that build themselves a tower without any windows. They have blocked it up shut. And they are getting high on their own fumes. You can imagine, Madam Presiding Officer, they have employed people in the Roxborough for Portage Hospital, and no one said to the assemblyman, look, we have employment here. What about persons in your district? Do they want jobs? Not one word. The board, who is responsible for hiring people, would have assisted in that. But there's no board. And they're busy plugging all the holes themselves, plop, 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 plop. All the holes themselves, because they want nobody to have control. The THA is operating illegal. I want to put on the Hansard. The THA is operating illegal, and you all have to stop it. I stood on this side, and some more like this side, you know, because this is the side of truth. See over across there? There is something about that side across here. When you go across, it's lies and more lies and more lies, and lies with a smile. I'm not saying those across are liars. I'm just speaking about the side.
Assemblyman Duke.
Madam President Officer, I've experienced it. I've experienced the pull to lies. When I was on that side, I was living a lie.
Assemblyman Duke.
I'm only giving a confession, Madam President Officer.
Continue.
When I was on that side, I was living a lie. But on this side, I bear true witness to the people of Tobago. Something is wrong with that side. But I thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The motion today is a serious one. It's something that we should just vote on. And clap and say, minority leader, thank you for the push. Thank you for the push. Not that they needed it, but at the end of the day, they also need it also too. Because there's no way the public would have known what is going on with the board. Because they operate in silence. As if it's a private organization. As if it's some kind of a secret society they're running. This is a democracy. When you hear the code living back across it, pure gangster. No wonder I'm on this side. But I must say I miss my friends. I miss my brothers and my sisters on that side.
Assemblyman Duke, your time has since elapsed.
But I'm Presiding Officer, I thank you. I think I ended on a good note there.
Thank you. Assemblyman Hackett.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I rise on Standing Order 44. B, to the member for Roxborough, Argyle, to elucidate some matter raised by that member in the course of his speech, where the member speaking is willing to, well, you, of course, you spoke before, but I would like to bring some clarity. We're in the House, and of course, this information goes on the Hansard. You spoke to the fact that the THA Act and the TRHA Act are on par. I wish to bring some clarity to that, sir.
Okay,
in the
members. Okay,
exercise of its
members.
powers,
Members.
RHA Act, Part 2,
Members.
RHA Act, Part 2, Section 5,
Members.
clearly states,
Assemblyman Hackett, please. Allow the member to ask her question for a point of clarity, please. Continue.
point of clarity to the member for Roxborough Argyle, RHA Act, Part 2, Section 5, Item 2. In the exercise of its powers and functions, the Board of the Tobago Regional Health Authority is subject to the provisions of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. So I think you need to withdraw your statement, kind sir. I think that you have misguided and misled not only the House, but the people of Tobago. And I think that reading is important here. It's clearly stated. Member for
This is not a question and answer
for
segment.
Roxborough Argyle.
Please,
Thank you,
please
Presiding
elucidate your point, Assemblyman Duke.
About my qualification, but I have a master's in employment law. And one of the things about employment law, you learn to understand rules, any kind of law, the reading of contracts, etc. What that simply means, and I read it earlier, I took some time off to explain it, under Section 25 of the Tobago Sub-Assembly Act, subsection 3, it speaks about how it is subjected to the THA. But my good friend, as a teacher who always sleeps in class, continued to sleep while the class was taking place. Let me just emphasize for clarity again. Where a statutory authority or state enterprise provides services in Tobago, the RHA, I repeated about 4 times, but they were sleeping. That's a practice. That's why they're no longer there, sleeping. That authority or enterprise shall in exercise of its duties in relation to those services act in accordance with the policies or programs of the Assembly. And at that time, I chided the Assembly for not creating any policies, no programs. Let me drop it like it's hot.
Members, this is not question and answer segment.
Thank you, ma'am.
The point was, you raised it on a point of clarification. Point clarified?
Yes, it is.
You're answering the question for me.
Members, honorable members,
Madam Presiding Officer, yes.
thank you. Minority Leader, if there are no other speakers, Minority Leader, you are free to wrap up. Are you wrapping up, Minority Leaders?
Madam
Oh, yeah, okay. Minority Councillor, proceed.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute in this debate, where the minority seeks to have the Executive Council take immediate and appropriate actions towards the urgent appointment of the Tobago Regional Health Authority Board. Madam Presiding Officer, my contribution today will focus on the roles and responsibilities in the main of the committees of the board and the importance of such committees in the oversight and management of the organization. On Thursday, 26 May 2022, at the 6th sitting, the following question was filed under my name to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. And the question reads, as it relates to the Tobago Regional Health Authority, Section 4.2 of the Regional Health Authority Act provides that each authority shall be managed by the Board of Directors. Can the Secretary indicate the timeline for the appointment of the Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors in keeping with the RHA Act? And the response of the Secretary, and I quote, the new Tobago Regional Health Authority Board will be announced in a couple weeks. Madam Presiding Officer, the last time I checked, a couple is still 2. We are now at the 10th sitting on the 27th of October 2022, 5 months later, and the board of the TRHA has not been appointed. For 11 months, Madam Presiding Officer, 1 month shy of a year, and the TRHA is still without a board. Madam Presiding Officer, I find this very disturbing and disappointing, to say the least. Under Section 4.2 of the Regional Health Authorities Act number 5 of 1994, amended by Act number 8 of 2012, it states that each authority shall be managed by a board of directors, and the operative word is shall. And Madam Presiding Officer, in her presentation, the Secretary would have indicated that boards in the past would have made decisions that, in her opinion, were not right decisions. But Madam Presiding Officer, that does not debar you from abiding by the law. It says it shall be managed by a board. And shall meaning mandatory. It is not subject to discretion. The Act continues in Section 5(1), and it says, subject to subsection 2, a board shall exercise its powers and functions in accordance with such specific or general directions as may be given to it by the minister. And we had a debate a while ago where if the THA Act is subject to the RHA Act. And yes, subsection 5.2 recognizes the institution that is the Tobago Regional Health, that is the Tobago House of Assembly. And as such, there are provisions in the Act to address same. And therefore, Madam Presiding Officer, subsection 5.2 states that in the exercise of its powers, the board of the Tobago Regional Health Authority is subject to the provisions of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. And Madam Presiding Officer, the question has to be asked, in the absence of the board, who is overseeing the healthcare system and the delivery of healthcare services on the island? With no board in place, Madam Presiding Officer, who has the legal authority to so do? It may appear that the TRHA may be operating illegally for the last 11 months since the last board demitted office. And Madam Presiding Officer, regional health authorities are a creature of the health sector reform program designed to strengthen the health sector's policy-making, planning, and management capacity, as well as separate the provision of services from the financing or the purchaser. And in this instance, the Tobago Regional Health Authority is the service provider, while the Tobago House of Assembly, or the THA, is the purchaser. And the Act therefore seeks to create RHAs as a semi-autonomous body, or as it states in Section 4.1, a body corporate devolving service, delivery, and management to regional health authorities to bring cost-effective solutions, establish new administrative and employment structures that encourage accountability and increase autonomy, among other objectives. And if this is what the Act seeks to do, how can these objectives be achieved in the absence of the board? How can this be achieved, Madam Presiding Officer, when the CEO is reporting to the Secretary of Health? When the Secretary is bogged down with the day-to-day operational matters of the TRHA, where is the time to provide policy direction, visioning, and establishing the priorities for the health sector in Tobago? Who sets the standards, Madam Presiding Officers, and monitors the achievements of these standards when the CEO is reporting to the Secretary? It should be the Secretary provides the policy direction and monitors the agreed upon standards. The board manages the implementation of the policy through the CEO. The CEO operationalizes the strategy and is accountable to the board, who in turn reports to the Secretary, providing a clear separation of roles and responsibilities. And Madam Presiding Officer, if you consider the composition of the board, it is set up in such a way to facilitate the efficient management of the RHA. And Schedule 2, which speaks to the constitution and procedure of the boards of the Regional Health Authority, sets out how the board should be appointed and who are to be selected members of the Tobago Regional Health Authority or regional health authorities. Further, Madam Presiding Officer, under the said section 13.1, the RHA Act empowers the board to delegate to a committee any of its powers and functions concerning the delivery of health care, including staff-related matters. And as such, Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago Regional Health Authority would have appointed a number of committees, be it planning, tenders, finance, quality, mental health, human resources. And Madam Presiding Officer, I want to consider a few of the committees, not all. And firstly, I want us to look at the audit committee. And for the purpose of this committee is to assist the board in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities with respect to integrity of the TRHA internal procedures, financial statement reporting, and on compliance with legal and regulatory requirements, as well as risk management, among other responsibilities given by the board to the audit committee. And it must be noted, Madam Presiding Officer, that in this instance, the internal auditor has dual reporting responsibilities. So the internal auditor reports to the CEO on administrative matters, while at the same time reporting to the audit committee on oversight. And this is done in such a way because the internal auditor is employed by the management, yet reviews management's conduct, and therefore to maintain a level of independence, the dual reporting relationship is necessary. So, as I indicated, on administrative matters of an administrative nature, the internal auditor reports to the CEO, and for strategic direction, reinforcement, and accountability, the internal auditor reports to the audit committee. So, Madam Presiding Officer, through the audit committee, the board of the TRHA approves the work program of the internal audit department. The audit committee reviews the findings and the recommendations of each audit conducted, and it reports to the board. The audit committee also reviews and monitors management's responsiveness to the internal auditor's findings and recommendations. Madam Presiding Officer, what is currently happening with the work of the internal audit department in the TRHA? Who is currently reviewing the internal audit reports? Who is reviewing and monitoring management's responsiveness to the internal auditor's findings and recommendations? Madam Presiding Officer. And the fact that the Secretary indicated that there were 7 periods that there was no board in place, and when they were on the minority, they said nothing or didn't bring a motion of the sort, it means that there was a dereliction of duty on their part, and they were not doing what they should have done. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to now turn my attention to the work of the Tenders Committee of the Board. And under the Regional Health Authorities, contracting, and all these things I'm quoting, Madam Presiding Officer, is an act of Parliament. They are the law. So the Regional Health Authorities Contracting for Goods and Services Regulations, Part 2, Section 4, provides for the establishment of a Tenders Committee. And Section 4 states, a board may establish a Tenders Committee for the purpose of inviting, considering, accepting, or rejecting offers in excess of $100,000 for the supply of goods or the undertaking of works or services necessary for carrying out the objects of the authority and for the disposal of surplus or unserviceable goods. Is the TRHA currently accepting or rejecting offers in excess of $100,000, Madam Presiding Officer, for the supply of goods and services? And if yes, who is approving it, Madam Presiding Officer? And under what authority are they approving these expenditure in excess of 100,000? We heard about the cataract clinic. The persons engaged to do the cataract surgeries, are they engaged for free? Who has authorized that expenditure, Madam Presiding Officer? And if we consider Section 6 of the Regional Health Authority Contracting for Goods and Services Regulation, it states that a board or a committee appointed under Regulation 4 shall A, determine whether an invitation to tender should be public or selective, and in the case of selective tendering, determine which person or business entity should be invited to tender. B, establish such evaluation committees as it considers necessary. And it says the board of a committee appointed under the regulation shall. It goes on to 2, a board or a committee may by process of selective tendering purchase goods, works, or services for use by the authority where A, there is a limitation of sources of supply of the goods or works or services. B, the goods are spares or replacement parts for other goods or form part of a system already in use by the authority. C, the goods, works, or services are, and it has Roman numeral 1, proprietary or specialty products. Roman numeral 2, supplied or disposed of on a repetitive basis. And D, such goods form part of the authority's inventory of stock items, the replacement of which is repetitive and cost-effectively negotiable at each point of replenishment. Madam Presiding Officer, Section 3, and I'm quoting here from the regulations. Section 3 says, where the committee appointed under Regulation 4.1 proposes to award a contract, the value of which is $1 million or more, the committee shall seek the prior approval of the board. But no committee shall, for the purpose of avoiding the stipulations of the sub-regulation, subdivide the quantity of the goods to be supplied or the works or services to be undertaken into 2 or more portions so that the value of the portions is less than the $1 million. And finally, subsection 4 says, the board, with the approval of the minister, may, by resolution, vary the limit of $1 million given in sub-regulation 3. Madam Presiding Officer, has the TRHA over the past 11 months engaged in any awards of contracts in excess of $1 million in the absence of the board? Under what authority were those contracts awarded? Are the contractors or the service providers properly engaged, Madam Presiding Officer? And there are more questions than answers. Section 9 of this regulation provides for emergency cases, and it reads, in the case of an emergency, the chairman, or in his absence, his alternate board member of the tenders committee, or in the absence of them both, the chief executive officer shall be empowered without inviting tenders to authorize the award of contracts for the supply of any goods or undertaking of any works or services necessary for the expeditious handling of such emergency, the total cost of which does not exceed $300,000. And when any such action is taken, it must be reported to the board or to the committee at the next succeeding meeting. So, Madam Presiding Officer, the regulations provided for emergencies. However, it must be done within the ambits of the law and under the premise that a board is in place. This is another example where the TRHA is operating outside of the law and therefore has opened up itself to serious litigation. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to move on. So now I turn to the Finance Committee of the board. And the purpose of this committee is to assist the board of directors in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities with respect to the financial viability and the financial stewardship of the TRHA and related matters. And there are a number of responsibilities of the Finance Committee, but I will just identify a few. To study and recommend to the board for approval a business plan and detailed budget for the capital and operating revenues and expenditure for the ensuing ensuing fiscal year. To study the detailed financial statements on a timely basis and report thereon to the board. To advise the board with regards to donations and endowments. To review and provide advice on major transactions of corporate projects that are presented by management. Are there any projects that were presented that are currently being undertaken that has not been approved? Semi-annually review and approve the travel and other expenses incurred personally by the CEO and the senior management. Note all expenses of the CEO must first be approved by the chair or the deputy chair prior to reimbursement being processed by the finance department of the TRHA. And Madam Presiding Officer, we saw only maybe a month or so ago where the CEO was on overseas travel. Who approved that, Madam Presiding Officer? And to ensure procedures are established and maintained for the receipt, retention, and treatment of complaints reviewed by the TRHA regarding accounting internal. Inform the board on financial matters. And Madam Presiding Officer, there are a number of roles and responsibilities of the Finance Committee, as I would have indicated. So we understand, and it is easy to understand why the work of the Finance Committee of the board is so extensive. Because if we consider the allocation of the TRHA, it is one of the largest line items on the estimates. And for instance, in fiscal 2022 and 2023, it accounts for actually approximately 75% of the Division of Health allocation. And this is a recurrent allocation. So in fiscal 2022 and 2023, the recurrent allocation for the Tobago Regional Health Authority amounted to approximately 75% of the Division of Health's recurrent allocation. And if we break it down into dollars and cents, the revised allocation, recurrent allocation for fiscal 2022 was $699.546 million. With the allocation for the TRHA being $525.728 million. And for fiscal 2023, which is the current fiscal that we are in, the division's recurrent allocation is $739.843 million, while the allocation, for the TRHA is $556.8 million. So in the absence of the board and the Finance Committee, who will approve, who is approving, who has approved the budget for the operating, development, and capital expenditure of the authority? Who will therefore set the financial priorities of the TRHA? And Madam Presiding Officer, when this administration came into office, the Chief Secretary was on record saying that they will do a reallocation or reprioritization of the financial resources. In the case of the Tobago Regional Health Authority, who would have authorized and approved the reallocation then of the finances of the Tobago Regional Health Authority? Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer,
Member, you have approximately 8 more minutes of speaking time.
yes, thank you, Madam President.
However, it's 4:30.
Yes.
And we are supposed to break at this time. So I'm going to ask if anyone is going to extend, say that we are going to sit until we have concluded this evening's proceedings, or are we going to decide as a collective that we are going to break for lunch and come back?
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that this House remain seated until all business on the order paper has been disposed of.
Members, the question is that we remain seated until the business of the order paper has been concluded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Minority Councillor, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Thank you to colleagues for extending the time. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, who is currently reviewing and monitoring the allocation to ensure that it is being spent appropriately? And this is one of the functions of the Finance Committee of the Board. And therefore, to ensure accountability and transparency of the financial resources of the Tobago Regional Health Authority, the minority is making an urgent appeal for the board to be appointed immediately. Madam Presiding Officer, the final committee that I want to look at is the Human Resource or the HR Committee. And this committee provides guidance on the human resources management and reviews, monitors, and makes recommendations to the Board of Directors on matters of human resource strategy and the policies. And if we look at it from a disciplinary point of view, and we consider the conduct regulations of the regional health authorities, the question now arises, how are these matters been dealt with currently? How are we currently dealing with these matters? And again, Madam Presiding Officer, I go back to the regulations, I go back to the Act. So the Regional Health Authorities Conduct Regulations 2008, under Section 35, sets out the procedures for disciplinary action. So Section 21 states, where an allegation of misconduct is made, the Chief Executive Officer shall, A, in addition to making a report as required under Regulation 21, inform the employee in the writing of the allegation, and B, forthwith refer the matter to a neutral employee to investigate the matter. 2, it says the employee referred to in subregulation 1B shall be a senior employee against whom the allegation has been made, and be employed with the same authority. And 3, it outlines who the investigating officer. So the investigating officer shall, A, give the employee written notice within 3 days of his appointment, requiring him to give a written explanation concerning the allegation within 7 days from the date of the receipt of the notice. B, shall require those persons who have direct knowledge of the alleged misconduct to submit written statements to him within 7 days, shall submit to the board all original statements, explanations, relevant documents, and his report of the investigation within 40 days of the appointment. And D, may be granted an extension for a period of up to 30 days by the CEO to submit the report. And the Section 22(1) says that the board shall decide whether to lay a charge against the employee with misconduct after considering the report of the investigating officer. 2, where the board decides to lay a charge against the employee, the board shall give him or her written notice of the charge, together with the particulars of the allegation on which the charge is based within 7 days. 23.1, the board may appoint a disciplinary tribunal to hear and determine any charge of misconduct made against an employee. And 2 says the disciplinary tribunal shall consist of A, a person, one person, or B, an uneven number of persons, be no more than 5, 3 of whom shall be employees of the authority or members of the board. And 24.1 speaks to an employee who is charged with misconduct shall be requested to admit or deny the charge and give an explanation of factors in mitigation to the disciplinary tribunal or the board within a specific period. Where the 24.2 says, where the employee makes an admission of guilt in his explanation under subregulation 1, the board may determine the penalty to be imposed without further inquiry. And Madam Presiding Officer, again, and the conduct reg continues to deal with disciplinary action. And based on the Act, there is no mention of the role of the Secretary of Health in dealing with matters of discipline to staff. Madam Presiding Officer, it has come to the attention of the minority that staff is being hired and fired at the Tobago Regional Health Authority. Who is approving the engagement of these persons hired? Who is giving the authority for persons to be dismissed? The minority is also advised that there are a number of senior managers as well as doctors who were interviewed and yet to be engaged. And obviously, because there is no board in place to approve the appointment of these senior managers and doctors. And the engagement of the appropriate personnel is very important to the provision of efficient and quality health care. And because these are critical positions and they have not been filled, there are several complaints, and we would have heard of some of them, by citizens. And there are seemingly efficiencies in the system. So earlier this week, Madam Presiding Officer, we heard that a family in the East went to the Roxborough Hospital to deliver a baby. The mother is in labor, only to be told that delivery cannot happen at that facility. This is compounded by the fact that there is no ambulance at the facility at the time. The father, anxious, confused, now had to rush his wife to Signal Hill in the Scarborough Regional Hospital. The child was almost delivered on the way, Madam Presiding Officer. This administration, I don't know what they are called, but this administration promised to fix it. They promised to fix health care on the island, and this is definitely not fixing it. Waiting times in the accident and emergency department in the hospital seem to have increased. Another incident was reported where an elderly man, a senior citizen, was waiting in A&E for 2 days. It was reported, Madam Presiding Officer, he was sitting on a chair. He could not be warded because there were no beds available. And the report was that because the department was short-staffed also, that is why he was waiting on a chair for 2 days, Madam Presiding Officer. This is not fixing it.
Minority Councillor, your time has since elapsed.
Yeah. A few minutes. I almost finished.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that the speaking time of the minority councillor be extended by 10 minutes.
Members, the question is that 10 minutes of additional speaking time be given to the member. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? I'm sorry. But
Thank you,
Let's get
Madam.
a division, please.
a division. A division for what, Minority Leader?
Some of them may very well want to hear councillor.
I think it's conclusive that they said no. Please continue.
See, Madam Presiding Officer, I rise to conclude this debate. And it's clear that on that side, they are more interested in fetting, in liming, breaking the law, than dealing with the people's business.
No regard for the law.
And I feel it for some of the members because I know there are some that genuinely care about the people of Tobago. So we are here, we come here once every month. And you're telling me we have only spent 3 hours in this house. And people are so busy to go down and fet down in by Burna Boy. And fet, whatever, all inclusive, and fet all over. That they cannot spend 10 minutes extra to allow the minority council to elucidate her points. We are talking about TRHA.
And I'm about to wind up.
We are talking about TRHA, which is the healthcare service provider on the island. That is the difference between life and death. And this administration don't see it important. They want to run off. We only spent 3 hours in here. What they thought it was when they took up the opportunity to come and serve people? What they thought it was? Or they thought it was gimmick? Or they thought it was child's play?
Minority.
No, I'm asking the question. What did they think that coming to serve people was about? Because this is the place to serve people. This is the place where we discuss the business of the people. And if it's going to take us 10 hours, I will sit here.
Honorable Member, I understand your point. However, we are still guided by the standing orders of this House.
Well, I am speaking to the fact that a standing order was raised to act.
And conclusively, they said no.
All right, so
you may continue with your conclusion to your motion.
Well, since Minority Council didn't give her the time, I would read it for her. Where we start? Right. Because I would ensure that we spend the time to do the people business. Or they ain't going to run off here today. As citizens, when we sit and observe what is happening, and it suggests procedurally, the current executive council is either not mindful of the law and regulations of the land, or it seems, as we are seeing here, that they just do not care. Look at all that is happening on the island in the recent past. There are several examples where this administration is running afoul of the law, building a stage on the coastline with no proper regulation, no proper approval.
Restrain, Minority Leader.
We are talking about the law.
The motion, honorable members, please. Honorable members.
My money spent, I ain't spending taxpayers' money.
Honorable members.
Like some other who just jetting.
Minority Leader, please continue. You have the floor. Continue. Minority Leader.
It seems as if this executive council, the people who govern the affairs of the island, has no regard for the law and has no regard for order. See how they're behaving? If as a governing body, you have such disregard and disrespect for the law, what do you leave for the ordinary man, the ordinary citizen? It therefore begs the question, if you are not abiding by the law with these matters that are currently in the public domain, it leaves us to wonder, what else is happening in the dead of the night, behind closed doors that we may not be aware of? I want to remind this administration that in matters such as these outlined above, it is not for the discretion of a secretary to decide whether she feel like appointing a board or she need time to appoint a board. The law is clear. And it is black and white. Section 4.1 of the Act plainly says that there shall be a board of the TRHA to manage its affairs. It doesn't even mention the secretary. What it speaks to is a minister. So I do not know why the secretary believes she has discretionary privilege in this matter. Discretionary privilege to the point that you would give a commitment in May. You said couple weeks, this board would be appointed. And then you come in to tell us today that you get some kind of epiphany and you needed 5 more months. 5 more months to do what? I listened, and she was not able to provide any justifiable cause why she needed 5 months. Even if you're looking for the best, you're telling me in Tobago, little Tobago, with only about 60,000 people, it's taking you 11 months to find about 7 good people to be on a board? Madam Presiding Officer, and I don't know if they don't understand the legal consequences of this. I'm reminded that when you're looking at use of seal and you need seal to certify different contracts and those kind of things, the law is clear. It says here, the board remains in overall control of the affairs of the Tobago Regional Health Authority. Our advice is confirmed by Section 11 of the Regional Health Authority Act, which provides that the seal of the Tobago Health Authority must only be used with the permission of the board of the Tobago Regional Health Authority. Matters, for example, which require the affixing of the seal to bind the Tobago Regional Health Authority requires the approval of the board. In effect, Section 4.2 of the Regional Health Authority Act, which says that the affairs of each authority shall be managed by a board, is not displaced by any powers given under the THA Act. So all the quarrel and all the thing about who have the power, it is clear here, black and white. It is the board that is empowered under the Act to treat with the management of the TRHA, not the secretary. And it begs the question, who employed the CEO? Because the checks I have made, I am told that there was no formal contractual arrangement made before the last board demitted office. So is it that the secretary would have taken up responsibility upon herself? Because she made the point that for about 3 years, if you add total sum of the PNM being in power, they would not have appointed, they would have had board lapse, and they had many acting CEOs. But that was for this very specific reason, because the PNM understands the law. And the law is clear that once you don't have an effective board, once you don't have an appointed board, you just cannot take it upon yourself to appoint a CEO. So what you would do, you would provide a short-term arrangement, you would have acting CEOs. So, but what we have here is a secretary that decided or believed that she had superpowers, and she has given to the CEO an appointment that she does not have the power to so do. So we have the TRHA operating illegally, and perhaps we now have a situation where even the CEO is appointed illegally. And that is why we have focused this debate. It's not so much that you're going to appoint the board or the board is in the process of appointing it, but it's to highlight to Tobagonians, that what we have currently in front of us is an illegal operation. CEO operating illegally, we have the board the secretary operating unlawfully, because she has admitted that in the absence of her board, she has her administrator signing on behalf of the TRHA. And I know my learned friend, who was a former senior public servant, may have something to say on this. Madam Presiding Officer, you know, they say sometimes you may skin your teeth, but this is serious business. This is a serious matter, and I am disappointed that the secretary would have come here and trivialized it as, well, you know, this is just something that we could just carry to the court and let the court decide. This is big. This secretary, and I want to clear this up because she made the point of they already starting the process, and in fact, I may have to make a call now because the process is now with the cabinet. And I was trying to get her to clarify the date upon when she actually, when they submitted, the Executive Council submitted these recommendations to the cabinet. And that is instructive, that is important, because my information is that sometime around September or so, the approval was had at the Executive Council level. And then the secretary thought that she could have just gone and appointed the board. And it's only when she recognized, no, you do not have that authority. She then, she was forced to have to go through the proper process. And now came here to the House, once again misleading the House, giving the impression that she would have gone through the process, done the right thing, and is now the cabinet holding back the process. Well, she asked me to make a call. I came here prepared, so I made the call since Monday. And up to Sunday, I was told that there's nothing in front of the cabinet. I want to repeat. There is nothing with respect to the appointment of the TRHA board in front of the cabinet. And that's why I was just simply asking her, you said you sent it. Tell us the date you got the acknowledgement that your communication was received. So that some of you all, Lord. I sigh because sometimes I wonder if it's kids we're treating within here. And so I sighed, right? Because we are dealing with serious business, the life of Tobagonians, and some of you all thinking it's joke. Some of you, look, I just got a call, just got a message, URP. They have not been paid. No,
Minority Leader, you know better than that, you're straying. Get back to the conclusion, please.
No, but Madam Presiding Officer, you know, it's just to show the kind of level of disregard for process and law that is happening in this space that is unprecedented. Unprecedented. I would give way for because the person asked me to raise it, so I'll give way for the secretary if he so chooses, assistant secretary.
Time and place, Minority Leader.
But I'm saying I'm willing to give way for the secretary.
And I'm saying time and place. Continue, please.
Madam Presiding Officer, at the end of the day, I've been elected by the people of Tobago to speak on their behalf. So I would continue to raise the issues on behalf of the people of Tobago. When I come here, I don't come here with any malice towards anyone. I come here simply to treat with the business, and I will dispel those functions to the best of my ability. I don't come here with no personal grudge. When I leave here, I go home to a beautiful wife. So I have no issue, and I hug up and I love her. I don't have an issue with nobody here. So my business is the people
Continue,
of Tobago.
Minority.
And as I wrap up and as I finish this debate, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to finish as I start, which is to caution my colleagues. We are not a law unto ourselves. we all took an oath to uphold the Constitution and the law. We all took that oath, and many of us took it on the Holy Bible. And therefore, it requires us to live up to that oath of office. It cannot be that we can just decide to do our own thing, treat matters as we would want it to happen. Yes, you might have your own way, but until the law changes, we have no choice but to follow the law. Until we, as an executive, we lobby and we get the autonomy that we deserve, and we come here and we can make our own laws, we have to follow the law. And that is all I'm asking. So the process has started as far as I'm aware. I also want to clarify and clear up something, because this matter has nothing to do with the hard-working public servants, the hard-working healthcare professionals. What it has is an executive council who continues to show Tobagonians that they just do not respect the law. And I'm asking you as I wrap up, let us fix this. Follow the law. I thank you.
Honorable members, the question now put is, whereas the Regional Health Authorities Act, Chapter 29, Section 5 requires that each authority be managed by a board of directors, and whereas this is necessary for the lawful, effective, and efficient operation of the healthcare system on the island, and whereas this current Executive Council has failed for 10 months to initiate the appropriate processes to appoint a new Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors, and whereas this represents a dereliction of duty and a flagrant breach of the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, be it resolved that this House agrees that the Executive Council should take immediate and appropriate actions towards the urgent appointment of a Tobago Regional Health Authority Board of Directors. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? The motion has been denied. Clerk?
Motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I now stand to move that this House... Madam Presiding Officer, I now move that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question is that this House now stands adjourned to a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. Good afternoon, members.